And for me, I ended up, one big place I invested in was, the gym. I just getting to the gym. I literally remember driving to the gym and going, this is just the only place I can get out of my brain. I could go get behind a barbell and do some miserable CrossFit workout where I just suffered for 35 minutes. But during that 35 minutes, my brain was unplugged and I left there a lot less stressed, right?
Yeah, no, I don't want to touch anything with technology. I want to completely unplug.
Yeah.
That's a good example of that.
I'm similar. And I think that's a really interesting call out because I know a lot of nerds, they go home and they go work on their, server rack in the basement that they got all their stuff. I try not to have any technology. I know I got my phone and I'm, you got your reality, but I'm not interested in touching that side because I, got other stuff I want to do and I don't want that side of things to kind of be my personal life.
Hey everyone, welcome to the IT Collab podcast. My name is Brandon Barnes, and I'm today by my host,
Nathan Taylor.
And our special guest today is Jonathan Robbins. Jonathan is a senior system engineer at PAX 8. And today we're going to kick it off a little differently. Nathan, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to kick this one off with Jonathan, and let's just start having fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. I'm excited to talk to Jonathan. Let him introduce himself. Actually, Jonathan, let's start with that. You and I worked together for a number of years and did a lot of crazy stuff together. So introduce yourself, and then I'll kind of do a segue.
Yeah, currently, as mentioned, I'm a senior system engineer with PAX 8. But before that, I worked with Nathan directly at MachineLogic for 3 years, I believe.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I've been in the MSP industry for 10, 15 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, we worked together for a while. And the reason we have you on the show is it's going to be a little bit of a departure from our normal format because we're going to hit some more close to home topics like mental health. We love talking about technology, but behind all the technology is people like Brandon and Nathan and Jonathan who have emotions and families and backgrounds and all the things we bring to every part of our life, we bring to the technology space. And Jonathan, we navigated COVID together, right? I think you started with us right before COVID, or right, somewhere about that.
Right in the beginning of COVID, but right after. I know we did some big projects that were impactful there for COVID for the state. So
we did. And, but even before COVID, you were dealing with, and I was dealing with, just the mental health burden of being an IT person. And I think, it's a high stress job a lot, right? And then if you're the person turning the wrench, there's the pressure of, projects and timesheets and, billing and deliverables. And then something's not working and you're behind schedule and everybody needs it fixed and something's on fire. You're putting out fires. And I think for me and you, I think a lot of the stress,
right? Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. A lot of the stress came from the cybersecurity side, right? Talk about what sort of pressures we felt as IT people, as we're going through some of those seasons.
Yeah. So with me, I was doing 80 hours a week before I started with MachineLogic. That, and then, you add some of the, you don't have much of a personal life at that point, especially when you're working as a consultant.
Yes.
So I would, doing, that plus, if you have any issues in your personal life, that just compounds it. And, I found myself at times not wanting to get out of bed and other issues along that lines. I guess really, sometimes trying to find life that balance is really difficult.
It's really difficult. I know I've struggled with, in that season, a lot of insomnia, just could not sleep, exhausted, but unable to sleep. And a lot of it for me at that time was being kind of number two at an MSP. The thought that those 50 or 60 customers and their hundreds of employees and their billions of dollars of valuation and, thousands of employees involved. At one point, we figured out it was like 30 or 40,000 employees that were working for companies that we had connection with. And just that thought that if we left the door open on a security side, or we messed up security, or we missed the security incident as an MSP, you know, the amount of money and destruction that could happen and the lives would be disrupted. That was a burden I struggled with. I felt that, and it weighed on me.
Mine, to add to that too, also, like, when we did during COVID, when one of our first projects was, helping with the response, and knowing that lives could be lost if you messed up or stuff, that we just added a whole nother stress level.
Yeah. And we were involved with large volumes of medical records and the security and the stress around that. And of course, that was also a time that all the cyber attacks started ramping up. They were really becoming more innovative, and we were really feeling that. So,
Kaseya comes to mind, I think, for some reason around then. Or was it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there was like the Exchange 0 days were landing at that time. That got something we were connected to and caused a lot of stress. And I remember just you and I and a couple of the other engineers just to get on a Teams thread, and somebody would go, "What the hell is this log?" Excuse my French, but just like, "Oh my God, is this the end of the world or is this not?" And then you've got 3 or 4 engineers on a Tuesday night. We're about to go to bed, full of adrenaline, trying to figure out how bad of a thing this one event log was. And it drove a lot of stress.
Yeah. And then, luckily I didn't have, kids or anything at the time, but I just can't fathom how someone with a family with kids and stuff is able to keep up and stuff like that. It's just,
yeah, absolutely. It's a lot, it's just one more burden. And for me, I ended up, one big place I invested in was the gym. Just getting to the gym. I literally remember driving to the gym and going, this is just the only place I can get out of my brain. I could go get behind a barbell and do some miserable CrossFit workout where I just suffered for 35 minutes. But during that 35 minutes, my brain was unplugged, and I left there a lot less stressed. And that was a big deal in that season, to just, you're desperate for those things that give you relief from that stress, because it's so hard. It's so much. Yeah. So, and I think we all could look back on those seasons, and there's things we'd do differently. I think certainly lots of areas we could grow in. I think you and I have both moved into roles where we have a little less direct exposure to that, which has been really nice.
Yeah, no, definitely. Corporate IT is definitely less stressful by far than the MSP side.
Yeah. So I think that's a really powerful thing. But I guess to bring that all full circle of, like, I think it's important that we're honest in the space that a lot. IT is stressful, and your employees and your customers and the people involved, there's a lot of stress going through that. And it's important to validate, I have a counselor. I go see a counselor a couple times a month because I can work through stuff with him. And going to the gym is critical for me. My faith is critical for me. These things are things. And, I know there's a lot of unhealthy ways people deal with it, right? We all have our unhealthy ways. And that's a real thing too, of like, hey man, now we're in a spot where some of our coworkers are struggling with stuff, and are depending on substance or other things to kind of get them through this. And that's something that, has a lot of negative connotation with it, but is also just real, of like, this is the reality of people are struggling to deal with this. And I think it's important to validate that's, partly caused by the industry and the work we're doing, right?
Yeah, no, just all the time spent away sometimes and just focused on just technology in general. Like, one example I give, I hate at night, after I'm done with work, I hate touching a computer. I don't want to touch anything with technology. It's just, I want to completely unplug.
Yeah.
That's a good example of that.
I'm similar. And I think that's a really interesting call out, because I know a lot of nerds, they go home and they go work on their, server rack in the basement, that they got all their stuff. I try not to have any technology. I know I got my phone, and I'm, you got your reality, but I'm not interested in touching that side, because I, got other stuff I want to do, and I don't want that side of things to kind of be my personal life. So I think that's a really good call out. Brandon, you got anything to add here? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. My family is actually decorating for Christmas today, since everyone's at home. So
nice.
I would say for me, those nights where you're working all the way through the night because someone went down or they, systems are out and they're calling you. That's stressful. I worked through Christmas a few times and, the whole entire family's at the house and you're sitting in the back room trying to help a company, get back up and running so they can do business afterwards.
Yes.
And those things can be really stressful.
Yes.
And you try not to take those worries home, but I think the more and more we're trying, the security thing, and we try and put as many things in place as we can, but we've all been there. And I think, people don't get it in the IT world is, all your systems are running in the back end while they're sleeping and they depend on us and they don't know it until something goes wrong. And then everything goes right for a long time. They don't know what we're doing. And if I try and explain it to them, they don't get it. Well, they do, but you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think for, like you said, Nathan, going to the gym is huge for me too. Or working out. I feel like if I don't work out for a day or, get some exercise, then I'm not happy camper. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another lesson I've learned is to put people in a position to succeed. I think there were times, Jonathan, where we didn't put you in a position where you were going to excel, and where the responsibility for that lands. We don't need to rehash that, but in some ways, like also just that awareness of like, okay, who has what skill set, and how do we support them through all this? Because it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, a lot to navigate.
Yeah, and similar to that too. That's where some of the unhealthy habits come in. Me personally, I like to work at 2 a.m. sometimes, and you get, how you get started on something, you just keep going and going and going until finally, you're either exhausted or you finally get it done. But that just comes, I guess that just comes with the territory sometimes. But yeah,
trying to problem solve, figure it out. And then it's 2 a.m. and you do figure it out and you're like, yes.
Yeah, it's the way to avoid reality, I would say.
Yeah.
Because you can get lost in some of those complex problems and completely avoid everything around you.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting feedback loops there, right? Of like, and then you throw in the personal life, right? Like you said, we all bring our things, and if you've got stuff in your personal life you're avoiding, you get stressed at work, then you start to find those things where you could, get lost in it, or you kind of become obsessed, or it's easier to be, I think there's a lot of workaholics where it's like, I'm just going to work, because if I stop moving, then I have to deal with all of these things. And yeah, there's a lot there. And I don't want to get too lost in that. I think it's just important for us to call out that for people in the tech space, especially on the IT front, the service front, there's just a lot of stress and layers there. And they'll kind of normalize that and validate that. Like if you're struggling, man, it's okay to say, hey, I need help, and go find a counselor, go find people to talk to, find peers in the industry. I remember having conversations with Matt Lee where it's just like, hey, Matt, I'm struggling. He's like, somebody else will talk about this, just, that ability to connect with other people and validate how it's hard.
Yeah, no. And, I think what was one of the MSPs we talked to overseas all the time.
And NITech.
Nigel and stuff. And, to hear that it's not just us in, the United States, it's all across the world, globally, really makes you feel a little bit better too at times.
Yeah, it does.
So,
well, let's take this conversation in a totally different direction. And I'm really fascinated to have this conversation. Jonathan reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, let's chat. I'd love to get on the podcast and let's chat about the mental health implications of everybody's favorite topic, which is AI. So Jonathan, I have no idea where you're going with this. I have some inklings, but I'm really excited to kind of hear what you want.
So I was just going to share my personal story with AI, especially with Copilot, since I've been at PAX 8, and how it's really helped me and improved a lot with, I guess, some of my mental state. I've always struggled with, I'm very dyslexic. I have severe dyslexia, I have ADD, ADHD, stuff along that lines. And, a lot of times I've noticed, especially Nathan, as you're aware, where I would struggle with communication, especially, I mean well, but it just doesn't come out right.
Right.
That's most techs, Jonathan.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're not the unnorm.
But and then also the sentiment when someone would reply back or try to get feedback, sometimes you just take it a very negative way versus it's not meant that way. And something like Copilot's really, helped me with, and I think it's really changed my world, is asking, having that second check all the time. Hey, what does this really mean? Or, hey, I'm trying to convey this. What am I doing wrong? I think it's really, it's changed my life around a lot. And it's helped me, definitely succeed a lot more in my professional and personal life. And, it's something I don't think we talk about of, how AI actually helps on the mental health side, because that, succeeding more there helps me more mentally. And, you go, it's just better overall life experience at that point. And then, I'm not saying it's a replacement for anything for like therapy or anything like that, but I think it's a tool to add to that arsenal.
So, Jonathan, are you talking about kind of like an Outlook when it says you might be writing this a little, like you could be nicer, or
yeah, or me, I actually honestly almost everything before I say it, I posted in Copilot first and said, hey, how would it, what's a better way to write this, or what's a better way to look at this, or how do I write this in a positive, sentiment?
right?
Because my approach to corporate politics has always been to hit it with a sledgehammer, which is never. So just stuff like that has really been very helpful. That's kind of what I want, most.
Yeah, I love that call out. I mean, you and I certainly managed you for a while, and we went back and forth sometimes. And looking back on it, I regret pieces of it. Of so many of those conversations could have been derailed with a face-to-face conversation, right? A Teams call.
Sure.
Yeah. But when you live your life on email and chat, somebody says something and one side reads into it or puts the wrong emphasis on it. And before you know it, two different people are spun up and you got conflict. And I think it's an amazing call out where it just gives you that chance to pause. Because I did it. I sent an email this week. It was just a recap of some strategic initiatives I'm doing in my new role. And I put it through Copilot. I said, Copilot, coach me on this. And it tweaked a couple things. And that's a really great call out of like, hey, this really helps me avoid these little moments that are disruptive, right? Of just like, help me with my tone here, because I don't mean whatever it might be communicating. I think that's an amazing call out.
Yeah. And then, like I work on a global team, so we have people all over the globe that I work with constantly. And there's different cultures have different, words might mean different things, especially, in the UK or in Europe versus like APAC, like Australia or New Zealand, where the words have slightly different meanings and so forth. And Copilot really does a good job of picking that up.
It really does.
Yeah. So that's just, it's been another great use of it as well. But it just really helps with that miscommunication sometimes at times. And I think from a mental health perspective too, that helps.
It's huge. It's huge because if you can avoid those disruptive moments where because sometimes it's really hard to unpack this. I mean, I got a middle schooler now, and man, it's amazing how I respond wrong once to him and kind of give him a little bit of a, angry response to something. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to spend the next, 2 or 3 hours unpacking this because he's now mad and he's spun up and I just, that's how humans are, right? We respond to each other. And if you let poke a hole in that vat of frustration or whatever they're bringing to the day, man, it could be a while before you can get that patched back up and say, okay, let's slow down. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. Or you took that the wrong way. It can be a mess. So I think that's a great call out.
Yeah. And that's maybe the only thing I would say that maybe slightly is a drawback. Sometimes with Copilot, it does take some of the emotion out of it, which sometimes I think really does help, sometimes. But for the most part, I would say it does a pretty good job.
Well, the nice thing is you can also just take I often don't apply its recommendations directly. I use it as coaching and then I rewrite it myself, right? A lot of times I go, okay, I see what you're saying, but I actually intend this emotion here. So yes, it's slightly aggressive, but I'm intending to be aggressive, but I like your angle and I'm going to tweak this word, right? Like that kind of thing can really be helpful.
Like, help me show some empathy or something like that. Just on the,
really good call out. Yeah. I also think it's really helpful with like the other challenge we're dealing with here is a big stress in our space. I think this is true for everybody in any career right now. Is the volume of data we have to consume.
Yep.
I mean, if I go on vacation, I don't touch my email. I come back to 1,500 emails in a week, right? And that's from 10 years of working for the same company, so to speak, right? Of like, I've got, 60% of that is spam I don't care about, but there's still 300 or 400 emails I at least need to navigate, right? It's ridiculous. And that's like covering the other 1,000 Teams message, whatever the variables are. There's an incredible amount of data we have to go through. And I think that's another area where Copilot really helps with some stress. Like, have you ever gotten tagged into that thread and by the time you get to reading it, it's 50 emails long?
Yep. And you just ask for a quick summary, and then half the time you don't even need to be involved.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's just a game changer to say, summarize this email. And by the time you read the summary, you're like, okay, this isn't for me, or I'm happy with where this is going. I'm not going to jump in, or, oh, absolutely. I gotta interact. But how long would it take you to try and get through that thread of 50 emails?
Yeah. And get down to what, they realize that you have any task or anything in it or not.
Yeah. That's great.
Game changer there with that. Definitely. And, also videos, anything meeting wise or video wise as well. I mean, now my help or how-to articles and stuff I should do a screen share and a video with like Loom or Stream or something, and then just have Copilot translate it and write my documentation for me on it. It's pretty neat. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The time saving definitely is a stress relief.
Well, yeah. Oh yeah. And that's huge too right there. But,
I'll
tell you, it's so much more natural to do it that way than trying to write it out, so to speak.
Absolutely. Because you're great at just getting on a phone with somebody and walking them through it.
Right. Exactly.
And then if you take that transcript and now you're 70% of the way there, I think that's also really true on like, if you have to do a presentation, you got to present on a topic. The ability of Copilot to either write the framework of a document or maybe build your PowerPoint slides from something else. What's interesting about that is it's a huge time saver, right? And like, if you've ever tried it, go take PowerPoint with Copilot and say, take this 50-page technical doc and turn it into a presentation. It's incredible.
Yep.
3 minutes later, you've got a beautiful 15-page PowerPoint and it's summarized everything and organized it. It's just that 15, 20 hours of work just gone in 3 seconds. But I think the stress side of that also is a huge thing of like, I like writing. I really like creating content, but I have massive writer's block at the beginning of like, how do I get started?
Right.
But if I can get Copilot to build the framework and then I can get myself engaged for 5-10 minutes with that framework and go, why did it do this way? I'm going to change this. And before you know it, you've got that creative juices flowing. You're making it your own. You're tweaking what Copilot gave you to fit your personality and your message, but you're not having to get over that hump of like, man, this is daunting. I don't know where to start. That's huge mentally.
Yeah. And it made, and like my experience with that too is like, I'll write something out and a lot of people won't necessarily get what I'm trying to convey. And that's where, like I said, it automatically with that. And that's probably where that's really helped me in my career, especially in the past 2 years or about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Just with the being able to actually convey the correct message I'm trying to convey.
Really great call out, because I think that actually is something that even.
So I'm gonna throw this out there to you guys. As we're going through this, obviously there's a lot more meditation apps out there, just FYI. Yeah. So there's some smart AI meditation apps. There's now virtual therapists.
I see. Yeah.
I get it. I'm just saying it out there, right? Like if you don't have someone, and then maybe there's people that just don't even want to talk to someone, but they're like just asking. I mean, I'm just letting you know that, there's definitely some things out there. I could have a conversation with Copilot or, ChatGPT. It's kind of something to think about.
Well, and then, not to tie it back to security a little bit here, but think of what the opposite of that though is too. And that's where I worry about is what if it gives you the wrong advice or the wrong answers, or somebody uses it nefariously. That can also do a lot of damage. That's maybe the big concern I probably have with it there.
That's human interaction too, I think. But I'm not just all bought into AI. I think I'm just thinking about all the different things that are going to be coming out with this, as you can add these articles and databases. Like I'm actually intrigued to see what a therapist chatbot would say to me.
Yes. Well, I'm laughing because I have a therapist I go see a couple times a month. He's invaluable to me, and I'll tell you, the conversation goes almost always like this. All right, here's what's going on in my life. Mentally, I know this, but I feel that, and I can't get past that. Like, help me process this. If I want to feel this, but I feel that. I know this mentally, but I my heart feels that, and like, so often the conversation is the same conversation where he draws something on the whiteboard and said, let's talk about the chain of thoughts and how your beliefs drive your emotions, which drive your thoughts, which drive your emotions. And like, I'm thinking about that going, could AI have those conversations? Yeah, that's not personal. And I agree with you. There's a lot of risk. And what if that gets poisoned or gives poor advice? But on the same token, you could probably write an AI bot to just tell me the same thing every time. Because in the end, it's almost always the same conversation.
Yeah. And it's just a tool, right? At that point, well, your therapy is, and it's really just giving you the tool sets to figure it out. But,
Right.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up, I keep thinking Miro boards right now, but it's funny because I've done someone similar actually recently. So with just, mapping out your thoughts and why you're feeling that way because of your thoughts. And
Yeah. It's powerful.
I'm with you, Nathan. I've done probably 12 years of, having a therapist. I mean, so you didn't know this, Jonathan, but I was in the Army for 8 years and I was in the infantry. So the initial invasion into Iraq. So I did go to therapy for many years because I had really bad anxiety and wanted to make the screaming noises of my baby son go away. So I really sought help, and it is really important. So I think, being able, I don't know how it really correlates with AI, but I can tell you that for me, being able to talk about it or express it, deal with it, cope with it, and finding the coping mechanism. So if that's me chatting to a robot, I'm pretty sure the counselor did a lot, but she also helped me call out some of the things I don't see.
Right. And then I feel sometimes it gets rid of the embarrassment by talking to AI over sometimes talking to
right.
And that can be very, cause a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. You can always control what time you want to have that conversation too, because I think a lot of us, I mean, honestly, my time when I'm struggling, it's 11 o'clock. I get to bed, I'm tired, and I put my head on the pillow.
Mine's rolling.
I'm so ready to sleep. And then 2 minutes later, you're like, oh crap, it happened. I'm in that different place in my head. I'm not going to sleep for a while. I'm spun up. Thought I was going to sleep tonight. I'm not going to sleep tonight. Well, my therapist is not available at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday night. That's not fair to him. Now, I'm certainly not advocating for AI as counseling. I think we've kind of talked about, there's a lot of concerns here. And you read stories about kids who are not socially, don't know how to navigate things socially. And all of a sudden AI becomes that crutch for them. And then AI tells them to do something stupid. I've seen a story like that recently. And, there is a layer of, we're losing more and more connection with people around each other. We have all of these ways to connect, but we're also less and less authentic at times. And so there's a real danger here. So I don't know that I want to make hey, this is good.
Yeah,
but it is fascinating to think about, right?
Yeah. Because you're right there. I mean, it can be a little unhealthy sometimes, I think, because of the lack of connections. But I don't think that's just an AI problem. I think that's been happening for the newer generations recently, especially as technology has evolved more and more and more.
Yeah.
Now, it's no more where it's hard. I mean, it's when your kids know more about technology than you do half the time. I mean, it's tough.
It is really tough. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's scary watching my son, my 11-year-old son with technology go, oh man, I don't know how much longer I'll stay ahead of you. It's wild. So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm digging into this. It's kind of interesting.
You're Googling about AI therapists and all the articles about it.
Wrong. I am co-piloting.
Fair.
Isn't that technically pinging now at this point? Right.
Fair.
Well, it's saying it's using CBT techniques to help help users manage their health and identity and reframing their negative thoughts. So that's actually something they used to do with light therapy back in the military. So just something. I mean, this is interesting to me because I'm like, there's always a risk, but I can also have some weird person telling me to do some weird stuff too. So
you just reminded me. I posted this in LinkedIn this week. I retweeted somebody that Copilot has the calm framework built in, the calm approach.
Really?
And the calm approach is a method for managing, I'm reading off of this slide deck. The calm approach is a method for managing challenging behaviors with empathy, structure focused on calm stands for compassion, assessment, listening, and moving forward. And I think the idea behind this calm approach is how does it work? Copilot can analyze your text file. If you have a transcript from a meeting, you can upload this as part of your prompt and ask Copilot to analyze it based on the calm approach. And
Right.
it'll provide feedback on better ways where you can diffuse stressful situations using this calm approach, which is exactly, this, parenting. It's the same thing, right? If I show compassion, I assess what's going on, I listen properly, then you can get into moving forward. So that's really interesting that even as we're talking about this, Microsoft's kind of already engaging some of that. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think they have choice on that. It's just, real life comes into work too all the time, or real life comes into, Copilot all the time. So you gotta.
Yeah.
We've all Googled some personal stuff.
Now, and I have tried with Google, and Google gives me some the same answers. So
No.
Yeah.
I found this website.
Yeah, exactly. And even their new AI as well. And I forget
Gemini. Yeah.
Gemini.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah, for Google. Yeah.
Yeah. I have noticed that Copilot responds differently to personal requests than it did a year ago. A year ago, if you said, Copilot, how are you? It had a very kind of a Siri style response of I'm not really a human. Don't talk to me. I can't really answer that question.
You mean like the political thing? Like if it said anything about Kamala or Trump or something, it would say, I cannot express any personal views on this. So I was like, man, okay.
Yeah, which is different, but just asking it, how are you today, Copilot? A year ago, it gave you a correct response. Now it's actually very friendly in its response. And I think it's in response to some of this that people are like, I just want a friendly voice today. How are you today? I'm doing well. How are you? Right? Like what does it hurt that the AI is slightly interactive with you in that way? Because, I've played with that a couple of times, and it's always fun to kind of watch yourself and it feels good. Like, how are you, Copilot? I'm good. How are you? And if you say thank you, it responds well. Inanimate, AI object, but there is still, whether it's anthropomorphizing onto that AI, there's still a feedback loop that we want.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but, I have high schoolers and I had to drive them to high school a couple years ago before they got cars. So every morning I would ask, I had, Google Play in my car, and I would say, hey, Google, will you tell me a dad joke? Just to try to brighten up her day.
We used to have our daily...
It's heard me. It's like...
Oh, go ahead.
It's saying a joke behind me. Sorry, my Google. But I mean, just to try and brighten it, because, their face is so stoic, and in the morning, that it's, try and brighten it up so they can have some fun with it.
Yeah, I used to use Power Automate to send a dad joke every day to our team's channel.
I remember that. I missed that. And then we had to disable it because eventually they started getting a little bit not safe for work. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on. You can't rate that in the team's channel.
That's a dirty dad joke.
Yes. But I do love that idea because I'm wrestling with that same thing, Brandon, of I've got, a 13-year-old nephew and we hang out once in a while. I'm like, man, how do I draw you out? I want to connect with you and let you know I'm here for you. How are you? Fine. How's your day? Good. What are you learning in school? Stuff. What's your favorite subject? Math. Come on, man. I'm really trying here. And I think
just type to
AI is great for
text
that.
Yeah.
Give me some questions that are open-ended that'll get because AI has read every book on how to get people to communicate there is, and it's already ingested it. So maybe it's got some great tips for you. So that's a great call out.
Yep.
Well, Jonathan, this has been fun. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Great
vulnerability. This is something we don't talk about in culture is some of these things, our challenges. And I do intend to have some additional people on the call over the coming months. Just to further conversations. I think we need to normalize the fact that this is a real thing, that IT is stressful, and that your coworkers and your employees and your customers, they're dealing with a lot personally. And you throw in the economy and COVID and politics, and there's people come to work carrying all those things, and then you throw the stress of work on top. And it's important that we're really empathetic to those around us. So thank you for bringing this topic to us, Jonathan.
No, and then, my final thoughts is it just, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay not to be okay sometimes. And,
Yeah.
hopefully people reach out if they ever feel that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining. I do want to say this, I work with a lot of engineers, and for some reason, me being the one person that kind of can be the engineer whisperer, I love troubleshooting, but I can talk. And I wanted to shout out because there's a lot of engineers that just don't talk about their emotions. They don't talk about their things. I can sense it and I can see it. And a good manager can tell when an engineer's going bad, like he's having a bad day. And just be cognizant, because your engineers are really smart. Your IT people are really smart. Sometimes they just know how to express it. So just be aware of that. And, they internalize and they help people all day long solving other people's problems. Sometimes they don't find the things to solve their own problems.
Yeah.
So it's just a call out, and I appreciate it. Nathan, unless you got something else, just want to wrap it up. And, I know this is kind of a different episode, but, to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe, write some comments. We're getting some traction. So really appreciate it, all you guys out there.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Jonathan.